today let's talk about 7 moves that you should be making in fantasy football if you want to almost guarantee your spot in the fantasy football playoffs. We're going to go through buys, sells, starts, sits, stashes, and cuts, a little bit of everything. And you can actually check out the time codes if you want to go to a specific part of the video. Let's start off with some buys, okay? These are players that I think you really want to go out and buy in fantasy football right now because they are positioned leading up until the fantasy playoffs to really help you get there, right? They're the perfect guys to buy from weeks 9 to 14 right before your fantasy playoffs start to just give you that extra push to make sure you guarantee that spot in said playoffs. Let's start off again with some trade fours here. A running back that I think we should all be buying right now is Quinn Judkins. Now, yes, I'm aware of the injury that he's sustained. It's currently day to day with that shoulder injury, that AC joint sprain where the defender landed on his shoulder with all of their weight. However, their head coach has a very good track record of being honest with where players are at with injuries. He says he's day to day. Obviously, as we all know, Quinshon Judkins has the bye this week, so you don't really have to worry about that. But here's what's so attractive about Judkins. Number one, you just know he's like the dominant number one running back in this backfield, the definition of a workhorse. Number two, if you look at strength of schedule from weeks 9 to 14, so again, leading up into the playoffs, not a single team has a better strength of schedule, better matchups upcoming than the Cleveland Browns. So after their bye week, you can see the Jets, which are a neutral matchup, the Niners, which are a neutral matchup, but you've got the Ravens, huge plus matchup. The Las Vegas Raiders, a huge plus matchup, and the Tennessee Titans the week before the playoffs. I imagine Quinshon Judkins in week 14, against those Tennessee Titans is going to be the big reason why a lot of you guys actually clinch your last spot in the fantasy playoffs. Definition of a workhorse. We've already seen him in great matchup smash, and I just think this is a guy that's going to help you carry yourself to the next part of the playoffs. All right, second player I want to talk about here. How about Jaylen Warren? Now, there was a little bit of a point there where we were concerned about Jaylen Warren's role in this offense. That was after, week 4 versus the Minnesota Vikings. In that game, you guys will remember this, Kenneth Gainwell ended up just dominating against the Vikings, right? 77% of the snaps, over 5 yards per carry, over 100 all-purpose yards, 2 touchdowns. He looked great, but the great news for Jaylen Warren is that role has started to go right back up to workhorse status. 53% in week 6, back up to 65 and 62%, 15 or more touches in each of his last 2 games. They're showing again and again that they trust him to be their workhorse running back. And the schedule is actually very enticing, leading all the way up into the playoffs. You've got the Colts, the Chargers, and the Bears, which are all quite neutral matchups. I actually really like the Bears matchup for the Steelers. But you've got Cincinnati. I mean, every single running back is destroying that defense right now. You've got Buffalo, which is a very easy defense to run against. And then you've got Baltimore in week 14. Incredible matchups leading up all the way to the playoffs. A great offense with Aaron Rodgers leading the way, and a workhorse running back in Jaylen Warren. I think he's a fantastic buy for anybody who is looking towards that playoff push. Okay, this next trade low might be a little bit controversial. I would love to chat through it together. And that name is both Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. So obviously the concern with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison is, what the hell is J.J. McCarthy going to be for these guys, right? We only have one game with J.J. McCarthy where he, I guess he played week 2 versus Atlanta. But in that one game versus Chicago where he looked decent, Jefferson had 14 points. The week 2 versus Atlanta, he had 11 points. So I understand where people are coming from. Like, it's difficult to say we know 100% what J.J. McCarthy is going to mean for Justin Jefferson and for Jordan Addison. However, that talking point, I mean, you've already thought of it, I'm sure. But the guy who owns Jefferson and Addison, they're also thinking about it right now. Like, they're also concerned about what that might mean for both Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. So it's not like you're paying Justin Jefferson 2024 prices in a trade. Like, Jefferson is acquirable, and most years he's not even a conversation starter. Now, here's the good news for these guys. They get Detroit this week. It's in Detroit. It's in a dome. Guaranteed that the Vikings are going to be down needing to throw the ball. Then they get Baltimore at home. Baltimore with a healthy Lamar Jackson. You get Chicago, which is a great matchup. You get Green Bay, which is actually more of a positive than a negative. You get Seattle, and then you get Washington. Like, is there a single matchup here leading all the way up to the playoffs where you don't see a competitive game where they're going to need to throw the ball, where Jefferson and Addison are going to have to become really, really important to the roster? And here's the great news. Like, TJ Hawkinson has completely disappeared from this offense. I mean, he's a complete non-factor. Sure, he gets a couple targets, but there's just no explosiveness. He's not the same guy that he used to be. So while it's a little bit of an uncertainty, there's a consolidation of targets here in Minnesota. It's Jefferson, it's Addison, and you call it a day, right? Those are the guys that we really love. And even if you look beyond just these next couple weeks, you'll see from weeks 9 to 18, the Vikings actually have the best schedule of any wide receiver. So even into the playoffs, not only will they help you get to the playoffs, but into the playoffs, they face Dallas week 1. Are you kidding me? Week 1 of the fantasy playoffs against the Dallas Cowboys, that's money. Then the Giants, then the Lions again. I mean, this is probably rest of season wise, the best buys for wide receivers. And again, because they're not going to cost as much as you might think, because everybody has the same concern, which is right. I mean, it's okay to be concerned about JJ McCarthy, but I'm willing to make that bet on these receivers and ultimately Kevin O'Connell. Okay, let's jump to another pair of receivers that I want to go out and trade for. That is AJ Brown and Jordan Addison. Now, AJ Brown is actually really affordable right now, and understandably so, because he's just not been a reliable producer in fantasy football. He's actually the wide receiver 32 so far through 8 weeks of the fantasy football season, and he's heading into his bye. Obviously, we've had the games with the hamstring injuries. He re-injures his hamstring. There was talks about them trading him. Now the bye week is coming up. It's a perfect week for him to get right after he misses week 8 versus the New York Giants. But here's the deal. If you look at their schedule leading up into the playoffs, they've got Green Bay after the bye. That should be a very competitive game. Then Detroit, Dallas, Chicago. Really, the Chargers is the only matchup that you're like, oh, that's technically not a great matchup, but at the same time, 2 competitive teams that should, mean a neutral game script. And obviously, Devonta Smith, if AJ Brown were to go down with that injury even more time, I mean, he's shown he can be an elite stand-in number 1 for this offense. So those are quite a few buys that I really love. They're all set up to really propel you into the fantasy football playoffs. Now, let's talk about the opposite of that. Let's talk about some sells. Some guys that I really don't think you should be investing in right now because the schedule leading up to the playoffs suggests they might not be that great. Let's start off with Rico Dowdle. I think this is a very controversial one, and I understand why, right? Rico Dowdle, clearly with Chuba Hubbard coming back from that injury, he's averaged under 3 yards per carry, back-to-back games. He's been very ineffective, very inefficient, and Rico Dowdle has continued to be very effective, very efficient, right? We're talking about a guy that's averaged 4.5 more yards per carry from week 5 onwards, every single game. Now, to be fair, if you look at these matchups, Miami, Dallas, Jets, Buffalo, none of these are defenses that you're really worried about in the run game. They're not exactly difficult defenses to produce against, but Rico Dowdle just continues to be impressive. I hear you guys if that's where you're coming from. You're saying, look, I just want to trust Rico Dowdle at this point. However, here's the deal. Even if Rico Dowdle is a starter, he's on a less than, below average offense, not a very good offense, led by Bryce Young, and look at the upcoming matchups. He gets Green Bay in week 9, one of the worst matchups for your fantasy football running backs. Is there a scenario in your mind where the Panthers are up in this game and they can establish the run? Not really for me. He gets New Orleans in week 10. That is the one matchup that I think is actually a positive. Then Atlanta, San Francisco, and the Rams in week 13. And then you have a bye in week 14. So let's be so for real. The 6 weeks from weeks 9 to 14 leading up into the playoffs, what matchups are you excited about? 3 of those matchups, he could be a complete bust, right? The Packers, the Rams, the Falcons. And then you also have to deal with the fact that his bye week is upcoming. So really like week 10 and week 12, if he is like the full starter given the keys to the kingdom, maybe you're excited about him then. I just think there are way too many red flags moving forward with, Rico Dowdle. Yes, he's an effective player. He's looked very good, but I would be looking to move off of him if you can. So again, if there's a player that you could, off this hype about the Panthers saying that they're going to probably give Rico Dowdle more of the work, if you can use that report, that momentum to trade him away, then I'm definitely looking to do so. Okay, let's go to the quarterback spot, and let's go to my guy, Bo Nix. I loved Bo Nix coming into the season. It didn't really work out for the first 5 weeks of the season. He's now your quarterback 5. He's had some great matchups that he's taken advantage of. The Giants in week 7, the Cowboys in week 8. Now, even me as a big Bo Nix guy, I love me some Bo Nix, but I think we need to be realistic about his upcoming schedule. So if you look at the Denver Broncos leading into the fantasy playoffs, you don't really have a single matchup that you're very excited about. Houston this week is a terrible matchup. The Raiders next week, typically you beat those guys on the ground. The Chiefs, all right, then the bye week. He still has his bye week. Washington is really the only matchup until the fantasy playoffs that you could point to and say, yeah, I'm probably starting Bo Nix this week. So maybe this is more specifically for our people in Superflex formats. Maybe you look at a potential pivot. But if you're out there and you're starting him each and every week, maybe you package him with someone else to go get a reliable quarterback. And then even if we look into the fantasy playoffs, it's not like it gets much better, guys. I mean, even if you look beyond just this, leading up into the playoffs, even in the playoffs, like you get the Jags in week 16. I'm not really that excited about that matchup. But championship week, Kansas City. Then if for some reason you have a weird league and it goes to week 18, then gets the Chargers. I mean, I just don't think there's enough there for us to really trust him at this point. All right, the next move I think you should make is more specific to week number 9. And that is, if you can afford it, bench Courtland Sutton. Now, of course, if you're out there and you're saying, Zach, he's clearly my best option. I don't have another name. I'd have to look at the waiver wire. Okay, then start him, okay? But you have to be aware, if you have a better option, look towards it. The Texans are the worst matchup for your fantasy wide receivers. This year, they're giving up the 4th fewest passing yards per game, the fewest total yards allowed per game, and giving up the fewest points allowed to opposing offenses at 14.7. I mean, Courtland Sutton has been just fine. He's been a fine floor play in the last couple weeks. 16 and 10 points versus Dallas. I was really disappointed by his performance versus Dallas, honestly. But Dallas didn't really make it a game. Fell off versus the Jets a little bit there. Now you have to ask the question, well, Troy Franklin is getting heavily involved through the air as well. 10 and 8 targets in his last 2 games. But here's the deal. Just a terrible matchup against the Texans, right? It's just not a matchup that I want to pursue. So if you have the following options, I'd rather play them like Marvin Harrison. He plays the Cowboys. Tetairoa McMillan, Keenan Allen, Jordan Addison against the Lions, T. Higgins, or even Deebo Samuel without Terry McLaurin. I'd rather look towards those names. Look, what a lot of people don't know about the Flock Fantasy website is that there are a lot of free features. One of those free features being the My Teams feature. If you want to gain access to that, just create a free account, but make sure you use my promo code LAND, LAND. That way you're going to get access to that free feature where you see expert consensus on your league, waiver wire, latest trades, and how, the expert consensus would view the latest trades in your league. So definitely check that out in the pinned comment if you want to have that free secret weapon. Okay, let's go to my next bench of the week. In week 6, if you can afford it, I would suggest to bench Alvin Kamara. Man, this offense, it's really tough to watch in New Orleans, guys. He faces the Rams. That is the 2nd worst matchup for your fantasy running backs. And to be honest, like the Rams statistically aren't that scary when you look at it. They're middle of the pack when you look at rushing yards allowed per game. They allow the 8th fewest yards per carry, the 3rd fewest points allowed to opposing offenses. Some running backs have had decent games, like Saquon had 9 points, but 2.6 yards per carry. But Etienne and Henry were pretty efficient on the ground. They just didn't get into the end zone. Here's the issue though. Kellen Moore is just an ogre of joy. All right, Kellen Moore has just no interest whatsoever in using Kamara through the air, right? I mean, Kamara, we're looking at a guy who's had, a season high of 6 targets, plenty of games where he's had 2 or less. We're talking about Kamara, who last year, pretty much his entire career, you were seeing 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 targets at different points during his season last year. That's just not the player that you're getting this year. He doesn't have much juice, but also Kellen Moore is refusing to use him. I mean, Devin Neal had 3 targets last week when Kamara had just 2. I just don't understand it. Kellen Moore refuses to use one of the best receiving running backs in the history of the NFL, but I don't see it changing, and it's not a good matchup. I'd rather start Bam Knight against the Cowboys, Tyrone Tracy, Woody Marks, Rico Dowdle, who we don't really like that much, Kareem Hunt, and Ramondre Stevenson. Okay, 7th move I think that you should make is start Tyrone Tracy. Tyrone Tracy gets the 49ers. It's the 9th best matchup for your fantasy running back. Travis Etienne had a great day. Kyron, Rashad White, even Woody Marks last week, who was one of our starts of the week. He had a great day. Tyrone Tracy stepping in for Cam Scatterbo to be the starter of this team. If you guys remember back in 2024 as a rookie, when he took over the backfield, he had plenty of great games. 14 points against the Seahawks, 22 points in week 6, 23 in week 8, 15, 14, 19, 16. Plenty of usable fantasy football weeks. And now the offense is even better than it was last year. I would start Tyrone Tracy over names like J.K. Dobbins, Rico Dowdle, Stevenson, Bill Krosky, Merritt, Kamara, Jordan Mason, Ken Walker, Tony Pollard. That's where I am with that wide receiver, with that running back room. Okay, the following names you can go ahead and cut from your roster, free your mind, and go pick up some different stashes, which we'll talk about in a second. You can drop Justice Hill. Keaton Mitchell is starting to get more involved, so it's even if we were to see Derrick Henry go down, you don't know if Justice Hill is going to be that important. Cam Scatterbo, obviously on IR, you can let him go. Kenneth Gainwell, he's nothing but a handcuff at this point. Joe Mixon, if you are in a small league and you need your IR spot, and it's stopping you from picking up another name, I think you can drop him off. I mean, there's just no update on his health. I don't know if he plays this year. Keon Coleman, I just don't know when you're ever going to play him with any sort of confidence. He's just been so disappointing this year. Same thing with Jerry Jeudy. Kendrick Bourne, once Ayuk is back and, once Ricky Pearsall is back, I don't think there's any role for him. Marvin Mims, not a player you need to roster. Xavier Legette, Dalton Schultz, Hunter Henry, Spencer Rattler in super flex formats, you can move on from him. They're not going to start him again for the rest of the year unless an injury occurs. And Carson Wentz is on the IR again for my super flex leagues. Okay, look, we're going to jump into some stashes that I'm really excited about. But last week, I actually won the Quick 6 Super Slam contest for week number 8. I got first prize. So excited. The lineup that I used was Barkley, Taylor, Cook, Pickens, Kittle. I couldn't switch out London, but we still ended up finishing first place. Look, you can create your own lineup, by the way, by simply downloading the FastDraft app, using my promo code LAND. I'll match your deposit up to $50, and then you get my week 9 rankings completely free. You can create your own lineup, get fun with it. Here's what I'm rolling with this week. We got Chase versus the Bears, Puka, who's back versus the Saints, Kyron Williams in that same matchup. I'm also rocking with Metcalf versus the Colts, Etienne versus the Raiders. Those are some really good matchups for those guys. But again, create your own lineup, get unique with it. They're doing a very unique special this week where because it's Halloween spooky season, the Titans are also spooky in the NFL. So if you play any single Tennessee Titan in this week's lineup, you get a $10 bonus. It's limited one time per week for this week. But you can create some pretty unique lineups, and that basically gives you a free slip anyway. Okay, let's go into some stashes. Let's start off with Bashul Tutin. He's rostered in 25% of sleeper leagues. I think that number should be higher. Here's the deal. The likely outcome after the bye is that Travis Etienne is still the guy for the Jaguars. However, if the Jaguars have any intentions to give a bigger role to Bashul Tutin, that probably happens after the bye week. That's just when coaching staffs, they have an opportunity to sit down and say, how do we get this guy more involved, right? So if Tutin's going to be more involved, you'll see that after this week. So don't let him be on your waiver wire. Okay, let's talk about the Raider wide receivers. Jacoby Myers seems like the most likely player to be traded before the deadline. They're not on the same page long term. It's not a good offense. They're not winning games. So if he were to be moved, names like Trey Tucker and Jack Besh should be considered as a stash. Jack Besh would be the most obvious name to replace Jacoby Myers in his role. So definitely worth looking at. And then the last one that I'm the most passionate about is DK. Look, 1 week is a fluke. 2 weeks is a trend. If he does it 3 weeks, if he does it this week again, then it's telling you what they want to do with this wide receiver room. 16 points in both of the last 2 games. I want to roster him to see what he can do in the future. Guys, I appreciate you watching the video. Do me a favor, hit the like button to show some love. Subscribe if you like the content, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Nothing but love. Draft with me every night this week on the FastDraft app where there are thousands of dollars to be won weekly. Getting started is easy. Download the FastDraft app, use the promo code LAND at signup to get your deposit match up to $50. That's up to 10 free entries on us. And when you finish your first DFS contest, I'll send you my weekly rankings completely free. Check out the link in the pinned comment to start drafting today.